Okay. Are we on? Yes? All right, I guess so. So go back to the idea of the offspring in verse 15. We've got the offspring of the snake and the offspring of this woman. And the individual offspring of the woman will someday bruise the head. And literally it means crushing the head, which is a fatal wound. The offspring of the snake or its offspring will bruise the heel, which is a temporary wound, of the woman's seed. Now, this plays into something really, really important here. The seed of the woman is really important. If we flip forward to the next chapter, starts off with that very famous story, Cain and Abel. What's the first child that we know of born of Eve?
Cain and Abel.
Yeah, Cain, to be specific.
Cain.
And do we have problems with Cain?
Yes, my God, he kills his brother.
Yeah, that's right. So we have a problem with Cain going on. I don't want to get into the Cain and Abel story too much here, but clearly, is Cain going to be the one, the seed of the woman, who crushes the serpent's head? No, definitely not. However, when we get over to the next chapter, chapter 4, verse 25, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth. For she had said, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. Seth means granted or appointed. It's a very positive word. It means a gracious gift. As at this point, there's a hint that Eve's planting her hope on this being the one. Of course, Seth is a good guy. He's a godly guy. Is he the one? No. Eve is hoping for this to happen in her lifetime, but that seed won't happen for a long time. And there's something, because something else has to happen. Remember what it said about the seed of the woman. It's interesting. There are words that you can use in Hebrew that means descendant. The word seed is a little bit more specific. And it's tied to a category type. That's about the best way I can put it. It's a category type. It is, in this case, tied to the woman. Not tied to the man and the woman. Tied to the woman. Flip forward a little bit. Go to Luke 1. It's a very famous passage, especially this time of year. Luke chapter 1, the whole chapter really, with the introduction of the Gospel according to Luke. And Luke does something, and he looks back at these prophecies and he goes, this is what we're really looking for. Luke chapter 1. And somebody read verse 31. Not the whole passage, just verse 31 for me, please. Luke is way back into the New Testament. Liz, can you help him find Luke? Yeah, it's a little more, it's at the beginning and at the end, if you would.
It says, and behold, you will stay in your womb and bear a son, and you shall name him Jesus.
Okay, behold you, a woman, will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. By the way, Jesus is not just a name. It's actually Yeshua. Yeshua. Jesus, we get through the Greek.
Joshua.
It means, it's the same name as Joshua. Joshua comes through the Latin to us. Jesus comes through the Greek from us. You can debate back and forth on that, but this is the same name.
Yeah.
The big thing is that Yeshua in Hebrew means...
Yahweh.
No, it means Salvation. Close. It means salvation. Salvation. You're going to name him Salvation. Then we get to, and this angel tells her what this means. And then Mary responds to the angel. She's flabbergasted. She says in verse 34, somebody read Luke 1:34 for me, please. Go ahead, please, Liz.
Then Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I do not know a man?"
How can this be since I am a virgin? I'm not married, I haven't known a man, I haven't had sex, guys. And she goes, I ain't that Arumim. I'm not that naive to realize you got to have a husband. You have to have a sperm donor to get a baby. It doesn't work that way, God. I'm not married yet. I haven't had sex with anybody. How's this going to happen? This doesn't make much sense to me. I may be naive, but I'm not that naive. And the angel, next verse says, the angel answered her, saying, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the child to be born will be called Holy, the Son of God." Is there a human father to Jesus? No. From a human genetic point of view, Jesus is the direct descendant of only one person, right? Just one. Mary. The woman. Wait a minute. What does Jesus, just as a little remembrance, what does Jesus say from the cross to his best friend John? Take care of my mother. But he says, take care of this woman. The woman who bore me. Take care of the woman. Even when Mary confronts Jesus at the wedding of Canaan, and he says, hey, you can do this. You can take care of this little wine shortage problem. And he says, woman, it's not my time. And she says, please do it anyway. And he does. She's the woman. It's a high point, but he's also throwing back. He is the descendant of, he is the seed of the woman. Which is why theologians through the years have called that passage in Genesis 3, this verse, verse 15, the proto-evangelion. That's a fancy big $10 Greek word meaning the prototype of the gospel. It's a summation of the gospel right there. Hey, woman, you sinned, but there is a child, descendant of you. Adam, keep quiet here. You're not in this game right now. Descendant of you who will crush the head of the one who deceived you and was the direct source of all this problem. It's called the proto-evangelion, the prototype of the gospel. Right smack in the middle of your Bible is Psalm 110, verse 6.
I got it.
You got it? Oh, would you please read that for me? Now this is one that you, again, it helps to have the
He
Hebrew.
shall judge among the nations. He shall fill the places with dead bodies.
Ooh.
He shall execute the heads of many countries.
Thank you. Except for one small problem. It said he will execute the heads. The word there is not plural in the Hebrew. He will, literally it says, he will shatter or he will crush the head.
Okay.
Yeah. The head. Not heads, the head. Sometimes some translations say it's the chiefs, the kings, put presidents if you want there, but the thing is the Hebrew has a singular. He will crush the head of all this. By the way, for all of those who keep saying that, God's nice, and he doesn't want, it's true that he doesn't want anybody to die without salvation. However, you can't carry that too far. Because Jesus, when he comes back in judgment, and the prophets say, don't look forward to the day of the Lord. It will not be a pretty day. It will not be a light day. Because what is the middle part of that verse that Michael just read? He will execute judgment amongst the nations, and he will fill them with corpses, dead bodies. God has a judgment out there that's terrifying. But the real guilt is not going to be on those nations. The real guilt is going to fall down. The ultimate guilt is going to fall on the one who deceived them. And he will crush the head. Isaiah 63. You've got to flip forward just a little bit from Psalm to Isaiah. Again, we're toward the end of the book of Isaiah. Isaiah only has 66 chapters, so Isaiah 63, verse 6.
I got it.
Go right ahead, please. Six.
And I have trodden down the people in my anger, make them drunk in my fury, and brought down their estate to the earth.
Trampled, the idea is the same thing as that crushing of the head. The day of the Lord, when Jesus comes back to reign, is not going to be very pretty. And in the process of crushing the serpent's head, he's also going to be ending up crushing up all those people, his plural offspring, who have adhered to him. Does that make sense? It's not pretty. It's not pretty. And that's in the middle of the previous verse, where the prophet Isaiah is speaking on behalf of God and his Messiah. He says, "For the day of vengeance was in my heart, my year of redemption had come." Wow! Vengeance and redemption are happening at the same time in the process of this eschatological event, the end event. I looked, but there was no one to help. I was appalled, but there was no one to uphold. So my own arm brought me salvation, and my wrath upheld me. This is tough for us to wrap our heads around, that God, in looking at his day when his Messiah will come back to reign on the earth, is this mingling of salvation, redemption, and wrath and destruction. It's not a pretty picture. There's hope on the other side of it. But all these passages looking at Jesus, the Messiah's return, are mixed between the destruction, the death, the consequences of sin, and the redemption out of sin. It's never separated. And we have a God who has an anger level at those who have hurt his creation and his people. And at the same time, we have him saving out of that sinful world people, and at the same time that he's got a crushing of those who are part of that sinful world. It's a scary prospect. It's a scary prospect. People think that the end times are all just going to be nice and hunky-dory. That's because they haven't read the book. The book's terrifying. Actually, it gives us a great deal think about, when we go back to the previous verse, looking forward to that seed who will crush Satan, crush the devil, crush his serpent, and tell people about his gospel. I want to stop there with one little comment. This is a little bugaboo. I've seen this over and over again. How many people, can any of you actually give me a definition of the gospel? No, this is not a trick question. It's a straightforward, because for a long time we've taught about gospel, but we haven't told what the word actually means.
I'm always understood it meant the telling of the good news.
Yeah, but that's a redundancy, because gospel literally means good news. Do you see what the church has done for a very long time? Oh, it means telling the good news. Well, good news is just Old English word for gospel. What is the gospel?
Good news.
Well, that's just a circle. That just takes us back to the definition.
Truth.
And truth.
The gospel is,
Let me tell it to you this way. Okay, in the ancient Greco-Roman world, the Greek Empire had gotten rid of kings. They didn't want anybody to be succeeded, by father to son line. Same thing had happened in the Roman world. They had emperors. But that meant that there was usually going to be a civil war between. One dies, the head honcho dies, and the next guys in line duke it out until we get a top dog. Now, once somebody won that civil war, they sent out heralds across the empire. First the Greco Empire and then the Roman Empire. That would send out heralds all over the empire saying, news. Listen carefully. News. There's a new emperor on the throne and his name is such and such. When Caesar Augustus came to the throne, he sent out messengers with a slightly different message. He added an EU, good, on the beginning of the word news. Angelion just means news, message. Oi, Angelion, that's the word where we get evangelization. Oi means good. He sent out a message that said, good news. There's a new emperor on the throne. His name is Caesar Augustus. And he is willing to grant amnesty to all those who fought against him if they will surrender to him. Think about that. Good news. There's a king on the throne, and he's willing to forgive you fighting against him if you surrender to him. That's the first time we see in history that word, oi angelion, which in later on in English became gospel, good news. The gospel is the war's over. There's a king on the throne. His name is Jesus, and he's willing to forgive you of having rebelled against him if you surrender. What does Paul say about that? That while we were yet sinners, we were enemies of God. He sent his son. That's good news.
yes.
There's a king on the throne. The war's over. There's a king on the throne. His name is Jesus. And he's willing to offer amnesty, forgiveness to those who fought against him if they surrender. I keep thinking of that. How for years we closed worship services with that old song, that old hymn. I surrender all. I surrender all. There's a reason why that hymn was written. I surrender all. The author of that hymn, I don't remember who it was. Remember what the word gospel meant. There is an actual obelisk in what's now Turkey that has that announcement written on it, where the first use of the word gospel, evangelical, good news, cares?